Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 26. You're preoccupied. Zephyr nodded to the elf and stood up. I saw something. I'm not sure what to make of it. Oh? I saw Ferdinan running. Don't children run often? Not him. You've watched these memories. He's not a physically active person. He's clumsy and awkward and slow. When he sprints, it's short distances and always ends up tripping. But what I saw was amazing. He was graceful, like he was meant to run, and he was fast. I couldn't keep up. And her smirk plainly said how much she enjoyed his struggle. And he's a scientist, not an athlete. Scientists can't run? Not like that. It's not humanly possible without the mutation. Golden Hands danced in confused agitation. Even if it was, he's sick all the time, doesn't eat, and spends his day hiding in a lab. Her smirk morphed into a wicked grin. So what does that mean? I was dreaming? Zephyr's eyes pleaded for this to be truth. I felt awake, but I had to be dreaming. There are realistic-feeling dreams, but that doesn't sound like one. Stepping forward, the elf patted his head. You're ignoring an important detail. What? You already know the answer. Zephyr stepped back, not sure what to expect. You know the answer. Now to recognize it. Snapping her fingers, Zephyr found himself aboard the transport home. Another snap brought a chair into existence, and she sat, easing the burden of an impossible weight. She never sits. The elf pointed to where himself of a few months ago stood, rod in hand, wailing on his cousin's back. Zephyr averted his eyes. Not again. You'll miss it. What? What am I looking for? The elf pursed her lips. Watch. Reluctantly, he did as he was told. Every second of that beating burned in his chest, suffocating him. And then it was over. So? One golden hand circled from above to below the other, while Onyx's eyes looked away. I can't believe he didn't die. And what's the reason he didn't? What? Let's watch again. The elf gave the creepiest grin Zephyr ever saw. This time, a little slower. Before he could respond, the memory played in slow motion. The elf pointed for him to observe. Disgust twisted his insides. How can she enjoy this? The rod came down again and again and again. Then he saw it. The movement was subtle. I never noticed this before. Have you ever really noticed, Ferdinan? She smirked as her question slapped him in the face. I've already said there's no need to apologize. The bones arrived in time. Yamo looked exasperated, but Ferdinan wouldn't stop apologizing. Each time that response brought him closer to tears. Before the skeleton could start another rebuttal, Yamo continued, I'm sorry for asking too much of you. No, it isn't too much. Ferdinand floundered. I'm too weak, too incompetent, too broken. There were so many ways to end that statement honestly, yet he couldn't say any of them. Trying to excuse yourself? How pathetic. What did it say? Shaking his head, Ferdinand returned his attention to healer Yamo. Please, sir, I need to apologize for my incompetence. There's no excuse for being so late. I set the day, and the need was urgent. Please accept my apology. Earnest blue crystals bore into the man, twisting his face. They could go back and forth all day, Ferdinand apologizing and him insisting there's no reason. Thank you. A shaky sigh escaped the skeleton. I promise it won't happen again. Yamo nodded sadly, worry creasing his face. Are you okay? The tinkerer froze. Mostly. The bony hand kept pounding against his stomach. Why won't it stop demanding food? I gave it a bar 10 minutes ago. The effort it took to still his fist was growing every day. I'm fine, I'm sorry. Are you sure? Healer Yamo sighed when Ferdinand looked away. Miss Sienna thanks you too. Miss Sienna? That name pushed Ferdinand's mind off track. The girl whose arm you saved. There's no nerve damage. She's finishing rehabilitation. I'm glad. Hearing those words allowed his mind to accept he hadn't stolen the girl's arm. The relief. He nearly started laughing. I'm so glad. Such passion from the normally subdued boy made Yamo smile. But worry never left the man's eyes. John might be good at hacking, but Zhao learned from the best, meaning the younger thinker only learned from the second best. The science lead smirked. Too many things didn't add up. Even without the dentist's help, he'd figure something out on his own. First question. How close was the skeleton to everything that happened? Even with Ferdinan being Ferdinand and always taking more responsibility than was healthy, his charge was still acting too intense, meaning the boy had to be close. Infiltrating the Urani private hospital system wasn't easy. Its main data storage was self-contained and didn't directly connect to any outside systems. Most of his time was spent gaining access to storage. When he did, the security protocols were intense. They put some John design to shame. But security protocols were a hobby of his. Twists and turns and non-destructive viruses scored him a copy of the hospital's memory banks. Now to rummage through it. John wasn't lying about Ferdinan being hired to make that second skin thing. However, the number of entries addressing that paled in comparison to Ferdinand's other project. Those records were so heavily encrypted, his programs were still working through them. But he had enough to start. More than enough. There was so much it was overwhelming. But one folder caught his attention. It was simply labeled Uwaru Jingu. Uwaru was a fairly common name. However, his uncle was the only Uwaru who was also a Jingu. It was astounding how much time Ferdinan spent with Uwaru. The footage from his uncle's room, it made Zhao's heart sick. Seeing the man he most loved visiting over breaks was wonderful, at first. Then indescribable pain took over. Ferdinan never stopped visiting, and when his uncle slipped into a coma, the skeleton appeared and didn't leave. Days later, a horrible, painful beep screamed out the beloved man's passing. Ferdinan didn't wail or lament. He simply fell to his knees, clutching a screen for nearly an hour. An older man entered. After a short exchange, Zhao realized how sick Ferdinan was. The boy fell trying to stand, and when he finally made it to his feet, the best the skeleton could do was stagger away. Tears warmed Zhao's face, days of suffering through the footage. For the first time, he saw exactly what that virus did, not just to its victims, but to Ferdinan as well. It took a while to get himself under control enough to continue. There were 2 other folders with different names, interhospital communications and daily sessions with someone named Master Minjing. The rest was still decoding, but it looked like Ferdinan was in regular contact with a couple other people. There also seemed to be information from Azute's hospitals. Keep going. But he didn't really want to. Seeing what happened to his uncle was enough. But Ferdinan didn't have the option to stop. He opened the smaller of the 2 folders. The tinkerer did the same thing for a middle-aged woman, but she was in worse condition initially and didn't live as long. If I ever sleep again, I'll only have nightmares. How did he witness this day in and day out and not go mad? Zhao's chest constricted as Ferdinan stood vigil over the woman in her final hours, just as he had for Uwaru. There was still one more named folder. Evelyn Minjing, the world's hero, but she's just a child. Rura's charred body filled his mind. She was just a child. No. Zhao fought against the rising bile. I can't watch a child go through that. But he did wonder if she was related to the Master Minjing Ferdinan was in contact with. It makes sense, though that family name was fairly common. I need to stop. It was fine going no further, accepting that Ferdinan saw horrible things. But Zhao didn't want to. He wanted to understand. Breathing in deeply, he opened the folder of interhospital communications and studied the files. Neither did he stop until Herard appeared and dragged him away. Ferdinan responded to the next message awaiting him. Before he could read through the barrage of written and audio messages following it, an older, jovial man filled the screen. It's about time, son. Where have you been the last few months? You know I don't appreciate being ignored. Grandpa Huey! Scratching the back of his head, Ferdinan stood and accepted the scolding. There were too many messages he neglected. The last one he read was from his mother, and that was some time ago. A cold sweat ran down his spine. The Duchess. How many messages has she sent? Another lecture like that, even though he deserved it. I take it you still haven't read them. Shrinking back at the man's raised eyebrow, Ferdinan looked down and nodded. Tornadoes took out everything in Oomsburg, including the factory processing those bars of yours. Anonymous is less than happy. What? The skeleton's threadbare heart raced, refusing to slow. When? How badly have I failed everyone? How do I make up the deficit? Please apologize for me. Already did, over a month ago. Took the liberty of messaging a few contacts of my own. Demand hasn't been met yet, but supplies haven't stopped altogether. You disappearing without a word didn't help either. This lecture was supposed to be a series of light-hearted jabs, so when Grandpa Huey noticed tears running down Ferdinand's face, he stopped. Hey now, none of that. I'm sorry. Ferdinand's voice broke. Why am I so upset? He always teases. Picking at each other was a fun pastime of theirs. Why did it feel as if his heart was ripped from his chest and smashed onto the floor? I won't fail again. Stop it, or I'll come out of the screen and hug you. I'm sorry. Ferdinand managed a shaky laugh. I don't know what came over me. The bit of good humor in the boy's voice made Grandpa Huey smirk. My guess would be your hormones are finally kicking in. I've been waiting 6 years for that to happen. Crying, for any reason, was embarrassing, but Grandpa Huey's words were utterly humiliating, turning him from pink to cherry red. "Ha! That's what you get for not checking your messages, son." He laughed heartily. "What did you call for?" Blue crystals hid behind overgrown hair, and Ferdinand mumbled, "My supplies are low." "And you don't want any of it traced back to you." "Yes, sir." No, don't be crying then calling me sir." Another wave of heat shot through him. "Yes, Grandpa Huey." "Wow, that was a bit too easy." "I needed them a while ago." Still too red to look at the man, Ferdinand uploaded the list. "Also, I need materials for the bars and supplements. I'll make what I can here till production is back to full." Pulling up the file, Grandpa Huey looked it over. "I'll get on this and fire up the time machine. The usual amounts from emergency orders?" Start with double. We'll see from there." "Thanks. Thank you, sir." He tried, but being disrespectful to someone who did so much for him was wrong. "Closer. Keep working on it." With that, the box went blank. Ferdinand didn't place the next call until his skin returned to normal. I fell so far behind. But he'd used this newfound energy to catch up until it gave out. While waiting for his call to be answered, Ferdinand wrote a message to Master Fulison. He designed and finalized the blueprints for a machine he didn't have the equipment to build. Now to see if he could use a favor to have Master Fulison make it. No matter how many times Yu faced her reflection, it refused to show her what she wanted to see, only a reality she couldn't accept. The black material covering her hands stopped a few inches past her wrists. She wished it covered all of her, but both the healers and Master Lucet insisted it was important for her to accept how her body looked now. So she faced her mirror every day. Every day melted skin greeted her. Seeing it didn't make her sick anymore, at least. Not like her hands. No amount of rubbing them would ease the deep ache. Nausea washed over her. Her body was beautiful next to her hands. Please let me always wear the gloves. Closing her eyes, she stepped forward, waiting for the sensation to pass. When it finally did, she opened them and focused on her face. How much did it take to make my face normal again? How badly was it burned? Aside from a strip of missing hair extending above her ear, her face was normal. Exactly how it should be. But that strip of skin would never grow hair again. Neither would her mind search for a way to make it. She wanted to find a way, but it wouldn't. A light tap was followed by a muffled voice. "Yu, we're going to breakfast. Want to join us?" "Yeah." What was... Picking up the strange toy Herard gave her, Yu let her thumb spin the little ball bearing. "Let me finish dressing." Anything to escape the unwelcome truth, if only for a short while.